Hi, I'm Dr. Brian Porter from the Department of Psychology at Old Dominion University. I have the pleasure today to talk to you a little bit about the Job Talk, a part of the interview process where you're on campus and you get to share with others your research or your teaching style, and where you can seal the job itself or perhaps create a little problems for yourself. And so we're trying to give you some ideas about how to make a Job Talk the best it can possibly be. One of the things you're going to be doing when you do this Job Talk and preparing for it is fighting a lot of anxiety and perhaps a little bit of terror. We all were there. We all remember when we were there to give our Job Talk and the stresses that we were facing. When everybody's in the room for the first time, sometimes the first time in an interview, to hear what all about your research is and all about who you are as a scholar. And one thing too is you're going to be fighting exhaustion that day. Sometimes these talks are at the end of a long day of one-on-one meetings. Perhaps they're at the end of a long flight. And perhaps they might be on day 2 after that first day. In any respect, the Job Talk is among the most fun things you'll do on your interview, but also one of the most challenging and most important. And so I hope to give you some keys today for success. And at the end, if all goes well on your Job Talk, you get the job. The Job Talk, it can be that important. But the minimal goal you should have, of course, is to hold par, hold serve. That's what the Job Talk's importance is, and that's how you can succeed at a Job Talk. So I'm going to share with you a little bit of advice and some keys to success, a little bit of the research from literature and scholars that have talked to us about how Job Talks work and how they can fail, and give you everything you need to succeed. So some of the advice for success. One of the things you definitely want to do when you're at the Job Talk itself is to make sure you are dressed appropriately. Well, how I'm dressed this morning, for example, is not appropriate. I should be in a coat and a tie, absolutely. I am not. Make sure that you are well groomed, again, better than I am this morning. Keep a good attitude. Remember, I said that you're going to be tired. You might be a little nervous. You might be a little anxious. Your attitude at the Job Talk is extremely important. Are you lighthearted? Are you engaged in the material? Are you really interested in what you're talking about? Each of these things your interviewers are looking for. And by the way, not only are the interviewers in the room, but so are students, sometimes administrators, and they're all looking at you at, will you be a very good teacher? Will you engage me? Will you excite me? Are you thoughtful as well about what you teach? Imagine if you're presenting research, if you don't know the latest literature, if you don't know your methods very well, if you have very shallow conclusions, if you're not open-minded to caveats and criticisms of your work. Each one of those things you're trying to display during the Job Talk itself. And let's not forget, too, about social skills. Again, they are looking for a colleague, and you are in control of the room. You are talking to the masses. You are sharing with others how well you converse on your subjects, on your material, on your ideas. And again, if you show a very good attitude and engagement and interest, and you're thoughtful, and sometimes maybe a little playful with your audience and engaging them in questions and answers, then they're going to see you as to be a good colleague, a good teacher, and they're going to think their students are going to be interested to take your classes. The Job Talk itself is looking for really 4 things. 4 things. How well do you fit with the department in your research? For those giving research talks, this is most important. That is to say, what are you planning to do in your program of research? What publications have you done? What types of methods? How do you involve students? I remember on my Job Talks getting questions about, how am I going to involve students? How is my research going to engage them? How is my research going to fit in with the department goals? You need to have answers to those questions. You need to have answers also to perhaps how your research can be funded, because the larger university is going to be interested in, can you perhaps bring in research funding? Teaching skill as well is incredibly important. Now, this is important whether you're applying for a research program or more of a liberal arts university looking at hiring a teacher more than a researcher. Because again, anytime you get in front of public and you present your research or present your ideas, you are also presenting yourself as an educator, as a teacher, as a public speaker, as someone who has to know the material, know how to give it out to others, and engage their learning. This is the case whether it is a research talk or a teaching talk. You must be very good at this. And sometimes the only chance you have during the interview to display this is at the Job Talk. And then depth of understanding. Going deep. Can you handle questions and answers? Can you anticipate some of the problems with your talk? Can you see how your talk is only one slice of a greater picture? Most talks only give you 30 to 45 minutes. Sometimes they'll give you an hour to present. In no way is that enough time to give all of the depth of material. So you must choose wisely, and you must give your audience the understanding that you have been forced to only give a slice of your understanding, a slice of who you are, and as a result, make sure they understand that the questions can go deeper if they wish, and you are certainly deeper if they have time for you to talk about it. But again, giving them the understanding that you really are a three-dimensional presenter, researcher, teacher, and you know how to choose wisely to give them just what they need to see the very best in you. And of course, personality. Personality, personality. Be passionate, be engaging. They are looking for a colleague. They are looking for a teacher. They are looking for someone who they will love to be around. It would be awful if you were to give a talk very monotone like this quietly. I have seen talks like that, and I want to really kind of leave the room, and I certainly don't want them teaching my students. You've got to be engaged. You've got to be social. You've got to be passionate. Be exciting. Want them to be around you. And all of these things are what they're looking for in the job talk. Kind of daunting, isn't it, to only have maybe 30 to 45 minutes, perhaps up to an hour, to get those four things honed very well. Now, once you're at the interview, literature tells us that the job talk is actually rated number 2 in importance. So if we're not already a little bit stressed out as it is, keep in mind that when you're at the interview itself, the job talk is ranked number 2 in importance. So nailing it is very important. Getting it down is very important. And errors, making mistakes during your job talk, choosing a job talk unwisely, can actually be fatal. And most fatal errors during the interview, most fatal errors that lead to not getting a job are most common. They are most common to occur during the job talk. And just to kind of give you examples from our own experience at the universities I've worked in, we've seen great candidates throughout a whole day give a very poor job talk, and then they're not even recommended as an acceptable candidate. This is how important the job talk can be. The job talk should be nailed. And by nail, that means you should eat, drink, breathe, sleep it for days going into the interview. You should really have it well honed. It should be you. You should own it. This is not the aspect of the interview that you can go in half-cocked, unprepared, or off the cuff. It is very important that you absolutely have this talk nailed down solid before you get on the plane to head to the interview. Now, when you prepare the talk, when you prepare it before you go to the interview, there's a few things that you should keep in mind. And probably the first and foremost is to keep it clear and clean. You want to minimize introductory comments. You want to get to the material as fast as you can. Keep it clear and clean. Busy slides don't work. Lots of animations, be very careful about. Clear, clean. Also, it wouldn't hurt for you to use mostly white backgrounds. It keeps it clearer in most presentation rooms. Dark backgrounds sometimes don't work very well to be able to be seen unless the lights are out, and you don't want to put your audience to sleep. You want to keep them engaged. You want to keep them interested. Keep your slides clear. Keep your comments clean, and move forward. And in fact, when I was preparing as a student for my job talk, perhaps the most important advice I ever got was within 5 minutes I should be talking about the data. I remember when I gave a preparatory talk, and it took me 20 minutes to get to the introduction and the data, I had people falling asleep. I actually did. I had people falling asleep in my practice session, and I had a very well-astute methodologist who was in my practice room raise his hand at the end of my practice, and he said, "Brian, if you're not speaking about data within 5 minutes, you've lost your audience and you've lost the job talk." And I honestly believe that that is true. I altered how I did my job talk, and I've watched how others succeed or fail at job talks, and it is absolutely true that within 5 minutes you need to be talking about your data, or main scholarly contribution. So keep your literature trimmed a little bit at the beginning, or maybe a little literature and how it affects the data you collected, then move back to other literature and maybe your second studies data. But people want to hear about you, what you have contributed within 5 minutes of your job talk. Practice. I mentioned that methodologist in my audience who gave me very candid feedback. You have to put yourself out there for mentors and warm-up audiences to literally give you that brutal feedback, because if your friends can't do it, then you're in big trouble. You need the brutal feedback. No one is perfect at the job talk first. No one really knows how a job talk will play until they have a warm-up audience give them feedback. So in our Department of Psychology, we're actually trying to give our doctoral students faculty meeting time to practice their job talks, and it's working out quite well. I encourage you to seek out the same help in your departments and your faculty, and ask them again to be as brutal as possible. Ask them to forget they know you. Ask them to forget that they like you, and ask them to think of you as someone they've never met before. Would they hire you after the job talk? I promise you, perhaps of all the things you do, that will be the best preparatory advice you ever get, but you have to be willing to put yourself out for that feedback. And you have to know your talk. And by know your talk, you have to know where it's limited. Remember, I mentioned earlier about depth of understanding, knowing how deep you can go with the time you have, making choices about what you present, what you don't present. Well, the things you choose not to present, you know, could be of interest to your audience. Anticipate that. Perhaps you'll have extra material prepared. Perhaps you'll have extra slides hidden. And PowerPoint, for example, allows you to do that, or other venues, overhead machines. Still, having something prepared, or a chalkboard, or a whiteboard, smartboard, whatever, you may want to have some extra material prepared just in case you get that interesting question that you couldn't address in your time, but feel it would be important to address if you're asked about it. And again, anticipate your questions. You are scholars, you're teachers. You know what material may not come through clearly and cleanly, despite all of your preparation. Anticipate the questions, be ready to answer them, and your audience will consider you quite prepared and quite knowledgeable of the caveats of your research. And that, or the caveats of teaching as well, and that's very important. Again, shows your level of understanding. Before you actually come and do the talk, before you actually get here, there's some steps you actually need to do first. You need to know their audience and your needs. And so how are you going to know your audience and needs? Well, you're going to be discussing with the search chair. What is your audience going to be? Who is your audience going to be? And be prepared to meet those needs. Sometimes you'll give a job talk and it's only the faculty. Sometimes it's faculty and adjuncts. Sometimes it's students, sometimes it's administrators. Again, know who's going to be in the room, know how big the room is going to be. It's also very important to know the time limits. Don't violate the time limits. If they say 30, you don't go over 30. If they say an hour, I would actually aim for 45, and it gives you 15 minutes for Q&A. Know your time limits. I actually have a presenter that I use that has a timer that vibrates in my hand that lets me know if I'm getting close to a time limit. You may want to invest in such a technology component to help you not violate that. I assure you that being respectful of people's time is sometimes just as important as choosing what to say. And then knowing the level of detail. How detailed does your audience want it? So again, if you're doing a research talk with faculty, you know you're going to have to be discussing methods, statistics, conclusions, those types of details, because they're trying to judge how maybe quantitatively sophisticated you are. If you're given a teaching talk and you're supposed to be teaching as if it's to sophomores, then obviously the level of detail must be tailored to a sophomore audience. But all of these things you must take time to know before you prepare your talk and before you show up at the university or college. When you're there but you haven't spoken yet, you do need to take control politely. So before you give your talk, a lot of universities and colleges will give you time to prepare. I wouldn't count on that time to prepare. I should tell you that one of the job talks I've given in my career, I actually had 0 time to prepare. A meeting ran late, and they had to rush me to the room. I had no preparatory time whatsoever. So how do you account for that? Well, at the hotel the night before, check, double check your slides, check, double check your points. Everything you can do should be double checked before you actually show up to the room, if at all possible. The other thing I'll give you good advice, have multiple forms of your talk. If the computer doesn't work, what are you going to do? If the projector doesn't work, what are you going to do? If the chalkboard is out of chalk, what are you going to do? When I was on the market, I had overhead machines, I had dry erase markers, I had multiple PowerPoint presentations in my own laptop if I had it. You need to be a little bit of that much of a paranoid individual, if you will, because you don't want to get to the room and things not work for you. And I should tell you that even given this talk this morning, as we prepared to videotape this, we had technological difficulties, and I've already had technological difficulties pushing one of these buttons. So it is important for you to be totally prepared with the room as best as you can. Because truthfully, guys, no one will cover for you. Rely on no one to cover for you. Be prepared. Own the room. So what are some of the take-home rules that we have here? And these come from the American Psychological Association, my association, but most professional organizations would have similar rules. How do you walk away from a job talk with a successful venture? First, you got to show the confidence. Own the room, be yourself. You are trying to convince them that you are an independent scholar who will succeed. Show your confidence, own your material. Know your audience and know your school. Who are you presenting to? What are you being hired to do? Your job talk needs to tell people, convince people that you know how to do those tasks. And of course, tailoring the talk to the audience, making sure you're ready for their questions and their level of understanding, keeping the talk general and short. Too many details can be hurtful, particularly if you're not getting to your data and your scholarly contributions in 5 minutes. We will forgive you if you don't give a 5-slide literature review. 2 or 3 key literature components and move to who you are. Keep it general to that end, short so that they can get to who you are much quicker in the talk. And the other thing, answer the questions you're given or admit you don't know. It is important that when you prepare for the questions that you can actually answer them. A lot of job talks don't end well because people don't answer the questions directly or give incorrect answers. So the other advice I have for you is if you don't know the answer, you can say you don't know, but make sure you provide that answer later. Oh, and yes, by the way, avoid demeaning the questioners. We've seen that too in job talks, and I can tell you that never goes very well either. If you follow these bits and pieces of advice, and really they're only the ones that I offer to you, and they're based on literature as well and my own experiences. But if you do follow these pieces of advice, you're better off at the job talk and you're much more likely to succeed at a job talk. The point to keep in mind is the job talk is too important to take lightly. It is too important to be unprepared. It's too important, not to practice. But at the end of the day, if you do take the time to practice and prepare, I assure you, the job talk will be the best it can possibly be, and your audience members will be impressed with who you are. Remember, we want to hear your voice, your data, your contributions, your passion, your personality, and how well you're going to fit with us. We want to welcome you to our community. The job talk allows you to take control of your setting and show us that you belong here. We'd be very likely to have you join us. Thank you for your time and attention, and best wishes as you prepare for your job interviews and on the job talk. Thank you.